customer. And those things can happen in VISCO. So we've had, I mean, many of you have dealt with this already in your installs, where we've specified the accounting keys are, so-and-so as vendor, so-and-so as customer, that sort of thing. Also, if you have an inactive customer or vendor in QuickBooks, and they are active in VISCO, and you try and send them down, you'll get an error message because it's not recognizing that customer or vendor exists because they're marked as inactive in QuickBooks. So you either have to activate it in QuickBooks or make it inactive in VISCO. So the two systems.
Do they not, if you inactivate one, let's say QuickBooks doesn't come update VISCO?
Correct. VISCO doesn't. QuickBooks does not talk back to VISCO. That way, in fact, we can't program QuickBooks to talk back to VISCO. We could, for example, perhaps on a nightly basis, go and check which customers or vendors have been inactivated, and go back into QuickBooks and do that. It's definitely not something that we've done yet.
I mean, it's, if you make a change from one, you should update the other, whichever one you update, you're going to take out the reason.
I can respect that opinion. I'm not fully disagreeing either. I can respect it. I would say that we believe that our system is the primary focus, the primary area of data entry for customers and vendors. And if there's any fields.
If you make a change in VISCO, it will update QuickBooks.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So that is customers and vendors. Again, sort of top level stuff and not terribly complicated. I'm going to get a bit more into what we are now doing with invoices and bills. The theory is very much the same, but the application is quite a bit more sophisticated because.
Actually, put it on. So the accounting keys is the accounting key in VISCO is mapped to the customer and vendor name.
Yeah.
So that was, I think some of you might not realize that it's actually mapped to the customer name. And if the customer name does not exist, it'll add.
Correct. Yeah, so you may get trapped in a pitfall if it's not, you do get the message when you're trying to update a customer, and it doesn't exist in QuickBooks saying, this customer doesn't exist in QuickBooks, do you want to add it? You'll get that message when you're trying to add it, but that's kind of an alarm to say, wait a second, I'm pretty sure this customer does already exist in QuickBooks, the accounting key must be off, because it would be nearly impossible to compare customer ABC to customer space ABC. We just don't have really the intelligence to figure out the difference, the slight variation that may or may not be the same customer. So the best we can do is say, we think this is new, do you agree? And that's what we do. So that's the customer vendor maintenance area. And again, the reason to bring it up beyond what you guys have discussed in the trainings with Aaron and Susan in the past is just that it's become, the ability to modify this thing has become much more wide open over the last year or so. Now, to apply that same idea to the invoice and cost posting, you know already that an invoice in VISCO could, in theory, I suppose, turn into either an invoice in QuickBooks or a credit memo if it's a negative. But each of the fields that appears in a QuickBooks invoice or credit memo can now be controlled by VISCO as well. This wasn't previously true. Again, even as recently as a couple of years ago, we weren't able to offer this, but some of the applications of this that have been used to date are pretty significant. I mean, it's not something as simple as sending down a description. When we send down the invoice description right now, the majority you have under the item name in QuickBooks would be the VISCO product, sort of standard showing. I'll get to that in just a minute as well. But sending down a description that is more detailed than anything that's shown in VISCO. Right now, the VISCO invoices have a description that Aaron talked about earlier that essentially just pre-fills from a product name. But for relevant searches to occur in QuickBooks, having information beyond just the product name inside of that invoice description field may be very beneficial and really almost critical to properly searching that information in QuickBooks. So what I'm referring to, of course, is under the area of invoices. this description field. This would be the standard for what gets sent down to QuickBooks right now. Whatever appears here will also appear as the description in a QuickBooks invoice. Some of you may have already modified that. Others may be interested in doing so, but what we found is that a lot of people are doing this because they want to be able to search on this information within a QuickBooks find tool in QuickBooks that allows you to search individual fields within an invoice when you're looking for them.
So Andy, is it when you run a QuickBooks report, it says VISCO and QuickBooks? Is that where that's changing, or is that just the description side?
Just the description. I'll get into the VISCO ID thing in a second, actually, if you don't mind. Because it speaks to a bit of a bigger point, actually, that it was sort of point 2 of the 3 points that I want to discuss here. Amongst other things that have been used in the invoice posting, mapping stuff that goes to QuickBooks, is that class field, which was brought up earlier by Diane, that people have a bunch of different purposes for the class in QuickBooks. And I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, saying sending down the PO number of this class right now, which is essentially a mapping back, particularly the invoices, I would imagine at least. I don't know exactly how you end up using it in QuickBooks, but it's a mapping of QuickBooks' interpretation of how the purchase order that is associated with an invoice, and hence profitability reporting in QuickBooks becomes much more viable, much more realistic in the way that you would anticipate the gross margin detail report in VISCO to have as well. So that class field becomes critical. Now, having gone through multiple examples, we know that the class is something we can map to fairly easily, regardless of what you're looking for from VISCO at this point, to map it to.
Because Diane, you said that you're also having a class get sent down on invoice for you as well?
Yes, I have the trader's account, then I have PO number coming down to the memo field.
Okay.
See, everyone's different. What was did we settle on PO as a memo field because we couldn't put it somewhere else, or do you remember what?
I forget why we did it that way. I think it was more the problem with the trader, bringing the trader over, so it's.
That's right, yeah.
But then it's great with running P&L, you can just do it on one PO or on the traders.
Yeah.
We'll look at the trader and say, here's the P&L on him, why, the PO. A lot more information I like.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, as much as I think, I have to admit, probably the developers in our team, not these guys, I wouldn't blame these guys, because this predates them to a degree, but as much as maybe we were fighting the fact that QuickBooks could give more information because we wanted to be, masters of all things, of all great reporting, the reality is that's a very ridiculous view. So over the last few years, being able to improve the transfer of information into QuickBooks has become an important part of what we're doing. So that's the invoice posting. And I will just go a bit further when I talk about this and mention that the posting of bills, again, this is the terminology differences that exist between systems. Posting of what we call a voucher, we post them in batches, right? A voucher is a singular QuickBooks bill, a vendor's invoice. Each one of those gets posted in a batch, which, there could be many vouchers in that batch. That posting process can be configured much the same way as invoice. So items inside of that bill, I'm going to use some QuickBooks terminology, items inside that bill have class as well. We can also pass down a PO there. I think that's what's happening in Jose's case, that to really join the purchase and the sale together, that mapping occurs. The description is, of course, descriptions with every item inside of a bill as well. I don't know, perhaps you guys can think of other examples of stuff that we've done for you guys that has come on the bill side, but I'm drawing a bit of a blank here. I know there's a memo section, for example, on the bottom of our bill that we have customized in many instances to be various different things. So the point of all this is not that flipping a switch and everything's going to be perfectly sent over to QuickBooks no matter what you need, but it's that we've had so much experience over the last year in tailoring each one of these things that's becoming less and less sophisticated, easier to get to you guys quickly, and of course, less overall work and cost. So that's what I wanted to touch on, the customer, vendor, invoice, and bill posting. To get to the other, to part two of this three-part discussion, and address the question that Brad had earlier, the ability to map and send down product information is also new as of this year. And it's so new that I think only 2 or 3 customers have done it, and we haven't heavily promoted it yet either. But it is out there and running successfully on a couple of instances. So what was previously referenced as the VISCO product, where we only had the ability to pass down our own singular product as the item that appears on a cost, invoice, and also on a cost as well, I believe. And essentially wiping out any potential for profit by product in QuickBooks, because again, this speaks to the reporting that VISCO does, the gross margin detail, and other such reports, where profitability by product is a given almost at this point, I would think, for all of you. If not, we can talk later about the options that VISCO provides for profit by product. But to have that also available in QuickBooks, it's been a request that's come up on occasion, and so now the same logic that we've used across the board in customer and vendor updates and add and update, that whole process is also being applied to VISCO products as well, to add or update items in QuickBooks. Now, as you can imagine, that turns into, if you've got a proper list of items in VISCO that matches with the accounting key, those in QuickBooks, it turns into truly, again, quote-unquote, proper invoices in QuickBooks for reference or for distribution if you're so inclined to send out in the QuickBooks format. We're not going to stop you. We can't stop you. But it will show, actual products, actual descriptions, and a true QuickBooks invoice, just as you were probably doing before using VISCO in the first place, if in fact you came from QuickBooks previously. So that has been a goal. Now to get a little bit more into the profitability, there are some considerations that QuickBooks, depending upon the version, gives to maintain several items that are unique to that product. Default purchase price, average purchase price, and then of course all the inventory maintenance items that are worthy of pointing out as well. That this doesn't by itself mean that inventory can be managed in real time in QuickBooks. Just because you're sending over product descriptions and product details, unless we were actually maintaining every inventory affecting transaction in QuickBooks, we wouldn't be able to get a real-time QuickBooks without that reconciliation feature that we all know and love. So that is sort of a separate part of this section number 2 that is just, again, I can continue to discuss here, that essentially this gives way to the possibility of real-time reconciliation of products. Now, what goes into that, depending on how long ago you guys joined the VISCO team, VISCO group, you may or may not have heard the speech from me. I know some of you have, about how we think, particularly early on, because going from a system like QuickBooks, which manages inventory in a totally different way, and I won't talk about that in too much detail, how they manage inventory, but it manages in a totally different way than VISCO does. That going from QuickBooks to VISCO and maintaining inventory evaluations in real time is actually ill-advised. I mean, it takes 2 to 3 times as much effort initially as opposed to some sort of cumulative reporting in VISCO, which again, a lot of you are already doing on a monthly basis or weekly basis that grabs that inventory evaluation from VISCO, real-time inventory, actual costs, accrued costs, all the things that we do to come up with a precise